bullet shattered the restaurant window 3 inches from Raiden Kimura's head. Glass exploded inward like a constellation of falling stars, scattering across the white tablecloth where his untouched wine sat gleaming. Raiden's hand shot out, not toward his concealed weapon, not toward cover, but toward the 3 small bodies seated beside him. In one fluid motion born from years of calculated violence, he swept Mika, Suri, and Carrie beneath the table, his body forming a human shield over their trembling frames. "Daddy." Carrie's voice was small, confused. "Sure, Little Rock." His voice remained steady, controlled. "Close your eyes. Count your stones. All of them." The second bullet never came. Instead, silence rushed back into the fusion restaurant like water filling a vacuum. Raiden's security detail materialized from positions he'd carefully arranged throughout the establishment, by the kitchen, near the entrance, at the bar. Hand signals passed between them. The shooter had fled. Amateur, opportunistic, probably one of Viktor's expendable foot soldiers testing his defenses, probing for weaknesses. They'd found one. The girls. Raiden's jaw tightened as he slowly lifted himself, checking each daughter with swift, practiced movements. No injuries. No blood. But Mika's eyes had that distant look she got before nightmares. And Suri clutched her book so hard the spine was bending. "Sir." His second-in-command, Kaito, appeared at his shoulder. "The perimeter is secure. But your guest is late," Raiden finished, glancing at his watch. 20 minutes late. His grandmother's carefully selected prospect had likely heard about the shooting and wisely decided to flee. Good. He'd attended this ridiculous blind date only to appease Madame Eunhee, and he brought the girl specifically to sabotage it. A single father with triplets and a target on his back wasn't exactly marriage material. Mission accomplished, courtesy of an assassin's bullet. "We should leave," Kaito urged quietly. "Relocate to the safe house." "We're staying." Raiden straightened his tie, retrieved the girls from beneath the table, and calmly brushed glass fragment from Suri's hair. "If we run every time someone takes a shot, we might as well paint targets on our backs and call a uniform." Besides, leaving now would give his grandmother ammunition for months of lectures about duty, family honor, and the importance of giving the girls a mother figure. Better to sit through the failed date, prove the woman had stood him up, and end this matchmaking campaign once and for all. The restaurant staff scrambled to replace their table, their efficiency speaking volumes about how much Raiden paid for their discretion. Within 5 minutes, a new tablecloth appeared, fresh wine was poured, and the broken window had been temporarily covered with elegant rice paper screens that actually improved the ambience. "Can we get dessert now?" Carrie asked, her fear already forgotten with the resilience of 4-year-olds everywhere. "You promised crepes." "After the lady arrives," Raiden said, knowing no lady would arrive. But then the door opened. She walked in like she owned not just the restaurant, but the entire block it sat on. Ayanna Brooks moved with the kind of confidence that came from surviving hard streets and harder shifts, her burgundy dress catching the light as she navigated between tables with a nurse's efficient grace. She was 30 minutes late, completely unfazed by the security detail that shadowed her path, and when her eyes found Raiden's table, she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an apologetic smile, a knowing smile. "You must be Raiden," she said, arriving at the table like a warm breeze cutting through winter frost. Then her gaze dropped to the 3 small faces staring up at her with open curiosity. "And you must be the real reason I'm here." She crouched in her dress and heels, bringing herself to eye level with the girls. "I'm Ayanna," she said to them first, ignoring Raiden entirely. "Your grandmother showed me your pictures, but she didn't tell me you were all secretly superheroes. I can tell by your eyes." Mika giggled. Suri's grip on her book loosened slightly. Carrie thrust out her hand like a tiny businesswoman. "I'm Carrie and I collect rocks, and we almost got shot." Ayanna's expression didn't flicker. "Did you count them during the scary part?" "Your rocks." "Yes. Daddy told me to." "Smart daddy." Ayanna's eyes finally lifted to Raiden's, and he felt something in his chest constrict. Not from fear, not from the adrenaline still coursing through his veins, but from something far more dangerous. Recognition. Counting things helps our brain focus on what's real instead of what's scary. I teach that to kids at the hospital all the time. She stood then, extending her hand to Raiden with the same confidence she'd shown his daughters. Sorry I'm late. 6-car pileup on the FDR. I stayed to help stabilize a patient before the ambulance arrived. Her handshake was firm, warm, and she held his gaze without flinching when most people couldn't maintain eye contact with him for more than 3 seconds. Raiden released her hand slowly, hyper-aware of Kaido's subtle shift in posture nearby, the way his security detail had relaxed incrementally at her easy manner. Please sit. Raiden pulled out her chair, old-fashioned manners warring with his desire to dismiss her quickly and return to his carefully controlled isolation. I should warn you, this is not a typical date. Good. Ayanna settled into her seat, immediately engaging with the girls as they climbed into the chairs beside her instead of their father. I don't do typical. Within moments, she had Mika describing her latest drawing in detail, Suri showing her the illustrated mythology book she carried everywhere, and Carrie presenting her 3 favorite rocks from the collection she kept in her small purse. A clear quartz, a piece of obsidian, and something that looked suspiciously like a painted chunk of concrete. This one's magic, Carrie announced solemnly, holding up the quartz. I believe you, Ayanna replied with equal seriousness. Quartz amplifies energy. Ancient healers used it for protection. Raiden watched this interaction with the detached fascination of a man observing something entirely foreign to his experience. Every other woman his grandmother had paraded through his life had either ignored the girls completely or treated them with brittle, forced cheerfulness. Ayanna treated them like people. Small people with valid thoughts and interesting perspectives. When the server arrived, Ayanna helped Mika pronounce edamame correctly, showed Suri how to hold chopsticks without dropping half her noodles on the table, and taught Carrie a hand-clapping game that involved counting to 8 in 3 different languages. You're good with them, Raiden observed, his own food forgotten. I work pediatrics. Ayanna finally met his eyes again, and he saw layers there. Warmth covering steel, kindness covering hard-won wisdom. Kids don't lie about whether they like you. They're honest in a way adults forget how to be. Most women would have run, Raiden said quietly, nodding toward the rice paper screen covering the bullet hole. After the shooting, most women aren't from Harlem. Ayanna cut Mika's teriyaki chicken into smaller pieces without being asked. I grew up 3 blocks from where someone got shot every Friday night, like clockwork. My mom worked doubles at 2 different hospitals and still made it to my school plays. You think I'm scared of a little broken glass? Something cracked in Raiden's chest. Not broke, cracked. Like the first fracture in a dam that's held back too much for too long. Why did you come? He asked. Really? Ayanna paused, considering her answer while Suri leaned against her shoulder, already comfortable in a way that made Raiden's throat tight. Your grandmother said you needed help. Said you were raising 3 beautiful girls alone and drowning in the attempt. Said you'd never ask for help yourself because you're too proud and too damaged. She said that. Her exact words were, my grandson is a stubborn fool who thinks he can carry the world and raise 3 children without breaking. Ayanna's smile was gentle. I like honest people, and I like helping people who need it but won't admit it. I don't need help. You brought your daughters to a blind date, specifically hoping I'd run away. Ayanna's voice dropped, so only he could hear. That's not the behavior of a man who has everything under control. That's the behavior of a man who's terrified of letting anyone in. Raiden had ordered people beaten for less perceptive observations. Had ended business relationships over smaller perceived insults. But when Ayanna said it, it didn't feel like an attack. It felt like a diagnosis. Clean, accurate, treatable. Can you stay? Mika's small voice interrupted the charged moment between adults. After dinner? We have dessert at home, and Daddy lets us stay up late on Saturdays, and you smell nice. Like cocoa, butter, and hope, Suri added dreamily, ever the poet. Ayanna laughed, a real laugh that made other diners turn to look, drawn to joy like moths to flame. I smell like the hospital, baby girl. But thank you. Please. All 3 girls had somehow migrated completely to Ayanna's side of the table, leaving Raiden alone on his side like a man watching his life reorganize itself without his permission. Ayanna looked at Raiden, one eyebrow raised in question. He should say no. Should end this now, before his daughters got attached. Before he got attached. Before this woman with her easy warmth and sharp eyes became another weakness for his enemies to exploit. But Carrie was holding Ayanna's hand. Mika was showing her drawings on her napkin. Suri had actually put down her book. Dessert, Raiden heard himself say. At the loft. If you're willing to risk it. Risk what? 3 adorable girls and good crepes. Ayanna's smile turned challenging. I've faced worse odds in the ER on a Saturday night. She had no idea how true that statement was. The elevator to Raiden's penthouse loft required a keycard, a fingerprint scan, and a retinal verification that made Ayanna whistle low under her breath. Either you're incredibly paranoid or incredibly important, she observed as the girls pressed themselves against the glass wall, watching Manhattan drop away beneath them. Both, Raiden replied, which was more honesty than he'd intended. The loft itself sprawled across the entire top floor of a converted Soho textile factory. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and enough open space that the girls could practically roller skate from one end to the other. But what caught Ayanna's attention wasn't the expensive minimalist furniture or the art that probably cost more than her annual salary. It was the chaos. Children's drawings covered one entire brick wall, held up with painter's tape in a collage of color and imagination. An elaborate blanket fort dominated the living room, its interior glowing with string lights. Books spilled from shelves in organic piles that suggested frequent reading rather than decoration. A rock collection spread across the coffee table like a geological survey. This wasn't a showroom where children were merely tolerated. This was a home where they lived, loudly and completely. I expected something different, Ayanna admitted, toeing off her heels and padding barefoot across the hardwood. More sterile. The girls happened to it. Raiden shrugged off his suit jacket, and Ayanna noticed the shoulder holster he wore underneath as naturally as other men wore watches. He caught her looking. I can put it away. Don't. Ayanna moved to the kitchen, a professional-grade space that looked barely used except for the explosion of children's drawings magnet to the industrial refrigerator. I told you, I'm not scared of reality, but I'm scared of whatever you're planning to do with those eggs. Raiden had already pulled out ingredients for crepes with the mechanical efficiency of someone following a recipe rather than understanding cooking. He held an egg in each hand like they might explode. I cracked them, he said defensively. Into the trash, apparently. Ayanna gently took the eggs from him, her fingers brushing his in a way that sent electricity up both their arms. Go sit with your daughters. I'll handle breakfast for dinner. It's my kitchen, and I'm a woman who raised herself on food stamps and prayer. Sit down before you hurt yourself. For a moment, Raiden's expression went dangerously blank, the look he gave subordinates who forgot their place. But then Mika tugged his hand, pulling him toward the blanket fort, and Suri was already arranging cushions for story time, and Carrie was dumping her entire rock collection on the floor for Ayanna's later inspection. He sat. Ayanna cooked, in a loft filled with the smell of butter and vanilla. She moved through his kitchen like she'd been there forever, finding whisks and mixing bowls by intuition, humming something low and soulful that made the space feel warmer. Through the open archway, she watched Raiden with his daughters, the way his rigid shoulders gradually dropped, how his voice softened when Suri climbed into his lap with her mythology book. Daddy, read the one about Amaterasu, Suri demanded. We've read it 17 times. Read it 18. He read it, his deep voice wrapping around the Japanese syllables with native fluency, and Ayanna felt something shift in her chest. She'd been warned about Raiden Kimura. Her co-workers had pulled her aside after she mentioned the date, showed her news articles about a businessman with vague connections to import-export, and even vaguer connections to several unsolved crimes. Her mother had outright told her to cancel. But nobody had mentioned the way he looked at his daughters like they were the only pure things in his corrupted world. Nobody had mentioned the tremor in his hand when he turned pages, as if afraid his touch might somehow stain the innocence of children's stories. Crepes are ready, Ayanna announced, plating them with the finesse of someone who'd worked too many diner shifts in nursing school. Kitchen table, not blanket fort. I don't trust syrup around that much fabric. The girls thundered to the table, a massive slab of reclaimed wood that could seat 12, climbing into chairs while Raiden followed more slowly, watching Ayanna distribute plates like she'd been doing it in his home for years. You didn't have to. Eat, Ayanna interrupted, settling into the chair beside him while the girls demolished their food with the enthusiasm of tiny Vikings. And then we're going to talk about why you really brought 3 4-year-olds to a blind date. Raiden ate mechanically, tasting nothing. When the girls finished and scattered back to their fort, leaving the adults alone at opposite ends of the table, he finally spoke. Their mother died, he said bluntly, no preamble. During childbirth. Emergency C-section. They saved the girls, but lost her. Ayanna's expression didn't change to pity. It shifted to the clinical compassion of someone who'd seen death enough to understand its weight without drowning in it. 4 years ago, she said quietly. Not a question. 4 years, 7 months, 13 days. Raiden's jaw tightened. I've raised them alone. My grandmother helps, but she's traditional. Strict. The girls they need something I can't give them. Softness, Ayanna supplied. Gentleness. The kind of love that doesn't come with conditions or expectations. Yes, you love them. Again, not a question. More than my own life. Raiden's voice cracked on the edges. But I don't know how to be soft. I don't know how to be the parent they need. I know how to keep them safe, keep them fed, keep them alive. But I don't know how to be their mother and their father. Ayanna reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. You can't be both, Raiden. You were never supposed to be. So I bring them on dates like emotional hostages. His laugh was bitter. Make women run before they get close enough to hurt them when I inevitably fail to be what they need. Or hurt you, Ayanna added softly. When they inevitably leave like she did. The silence that followed was broken only by the girls' giggles from inside the fort, playing some imaginary game involving princesses and dragons. I grew up with nothing, Ayanna said finally. Harlem in the 90s. Single mother working herself to death to keep me fed. I wore secondhand clothes and ate donated meals and studied under streetlights when our electricity got cut off. I became a nurse because I spent so much time in hospitals visiting my mom between her shifts that it felt like home. She stood, carrying plates to the sink, and continued talking with her back to him. I worked 3 jobs to get through nursing school. Diner waitress, grocery store clerk, and weekend custodian at a funeral home. I learned that death doesn't care about your plans, your dreams, or your timing. But I also learned that life keeps happening anyway. That kids keep growing, keep needing, keep loving you even when you're convinced you're failing them. Ayanna turned, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. Your girls don't need perfect. They need present. And from where I'm standing, you're so present you forgot how to have a life outside of them. What life? Raiden gestured vaguely at the loft, at the city beyond the windows. I'm not. I don't do normal things. Normal people. My work. Your import business? Ayanna's tone suggested she knew exactly what his business imported, and it wasn't textiles or electronics. Raiden stood slowly, and suddenly the space felt smaller, more dangerous. He moved toward her with predatory grace, stopping just inside her personal space. If I told you what I really do, he said quietly, you would leave. You would run, and you would be smart to run. Try me. I control territory, Raiden said flatly. From Chinatown to Koreatown to parts of Manhattan, most people pretend don't exist. I run protection, gambling, debt collection. I'm not a legitimate businessman, Ayanna. I'm a criminal who wears expensive suits and pays excellent lawyers. Ayanna didn't flinch. Do you hurt children? Never. Do you traffic people? I'd kill anyone who did. Do you push drugs? No. Gambling and protection. Strictly consensual transactions between adults who understand the risks. Then you're a criminal with a code. Ayanna stepped closer, eliminating the remaining space between them. I work ER shifts in Harlem, Raiden. I've sewn up gunshot wounds for 15-year-olds. I've held the hands of overdose victims while they died. I've seen what real monsters do to innocent people. You're not a monster. You're just a man trying to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. Being connected to me puts you at risk." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "That shooting at the restaurant wasn't random. Someone's testing my defenses, looking for pressure points. If they think you matter to me." "Do I?" Ayanna interrupted. "Matter to you?" Raiden's control, that legendary discipline that had kept him alive through gang wars and territory disputes and assassination attempts, cracked completely. "Yes," he admitted, "and that terrifies me more than any bullet." The kiss happened like gravity, inevitable, unavoidable. His hands cupped her face with unexpected gentleness, and she rose on her toes to meet him, and for exactly 7 seconds, Raiden Kimura forgot about territory and rivals and the price on his head. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled back, reading the screen, and his expression went glacial. "Kaido, situation at the warehouse." He looked at Ayanna with something like regret. "I have to go. Now. The girls. Stay." It wasn't a request. "Please. They're safe here. Secured building. Panic room behind the bookshelf, if needed. But I need to handle this personally." Ayanna grabbed his wrist as he moved past her. "What kind of situation?" "The kind that ends with someone learning why you don't test Raiden Kimura's patience." He kissed her forehead quickly, desperately. "Keep them inside. Don't answer the door for anyone except Kaido. I'll be back in 2 hours." He was gone before she could argue, the elevator descending with silent efficiency. Ayanna stood in the kitchen of a crime lord's penthouse, listening to 3 little girls play in their blanket fort, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. Then Mika poked her head out. "Can you tell us a story? Daddy's good at reading, but you seem like you know better stories." Ayanna smiled, pushing worry aside for later. "I know the best story. It's about a brave princess from West Africa who learned to fight warriors twice her size using only her wit and her courage. She crawled into the fort, 3 small bodies immediately pressing against her, and began to speak. Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered like a jewelry box full of beautiful, dangerous things. Raiden returned at dawn smelling like smoke and copper. Ayanna had fallen asleep in the blanket fort. The 3 girls tangled around her like puppies seeking warmth. She woke to find him standing in the archway, still in his shirt with red paint splatters, watching them with an expression that looked like longing and devastation mixed together. "Bathroom," she whispered, carefully extracting herself from small arms. "Now," he followed without argument, and in the stark lighting of his marble bathroom, she could see the damage. Split knuckles, a gash along his jawline, bruising that would turn spectacular colors by afternoon. "Sit." Ayanna pointed to the closed toilet lid, already opening cabinets until she found a first aid kit that was far too well stocked for a normal household. "And tell me what happened." "One of Viktor Malenkov's men tried to move product through my territory." Raiden winced as she cleaned his knuckles with antiseptic. "Thought he could bypass my network, undercut my prices. He was wrong." "Is he dead?" "No." Raiden met her eyes. "But he'll remember the lesson." Ayanna worked in silence, her nurse's hands efficient and gentle. She treated enough gang members in the ER to recognize the specific damage of close-quarters combat. The defensive wounds on his forearms, the offensive damage to his hands, the spray pattern of red paint that suggested arterial wounds on someone else. "Viktor Malenkov," she repeated, butterfly bandaging the cut on his jaw. "Should I know that name?" "He runs the Eastern European Syndicate. Controls everything from Brighton Beach to parts of Queens." Raiden's voice went flat. "He's been pushing into my territory for 6 months. Testing boundaries. Tonight was another test. And the restaurant shooting? His opening move." Raiden caught her wrist gently as she reached for more bandages. "Ayanna, you need to understand what you're walking into. Viktor doesn't just want my territory. He wants me destroyed, humiliated. He blames me for his brother's death." "Did you kill his brother?" "No. His brother OD'd on product Viktor himself was pushing. But grief doesn't care about facts." Raiden stood, towering over her in the small space. "Viktor thinks taking everything I love will balance the scales. First my wife." Ayanna went very still. "What did you say?" The accident that killed my wife wasn't an accident. Raiden's voice cracked on the edges. I've suspected for years but couldn't prove it. Tonight, the man I questioned confirmed it. Viktor orchestrated it, paid off a truck driver to run a red light at exactly the right moment. My wife was 8 months pregnant, driving to a doctor's appointment I was too busy to attend. The weight of that confession hung between them like smoke. He murdered her, Ayanna said quietly. And your unborn children nearly died because of him. But they didn't die. They survived. And Victor's been waiting 4 years for me to find someone else to love, so he could take them too. Raiden's hands framed her face with devastating gentleness, so he could make me feel that loss again. Only this time, I'd know it was coming. I'd see it happen. I'd be helpless to stop it. Then we stop him first. Ayanna's voice had steel in it that made Raiden's eyebrows rise. You think I'm going to run because some Eastern European gangster has a vendetta? I watched my mother fight off muggers with nothing but a purse and determination. I've stared down gang members who came into my ER threatening to finish what they started. I don't run, Raiden. I dig in. This isn't some ER confrontation. No, it's worse. Because now I care about 3 little girls sleeping in your living room who've already lost one mother. Ayanna's eyes blazed. So you're going to tell me everything. Every detail about Viktor, his organization, his patterns, his weaknesses. And then we're going to figure out how to keep your daughter safe while you do whatever needs doing. Raiden stared at her like she'd just spoken an alien language. You're not afraid. I'm terrified. Ayanna's smile was sharp. But fear and stupidity aren't the same thing. Fear means I'm smart enough to understand the danger. Stupidity would be pretending it doesn't exist or thinking I'm safer somewhere else. If Viktor's targeting people you care about, running just makes me an easier target. Something in Raiden's expression shifted, from protective to possessive to something that looked dangerously close to hope. My grandmother wants to meet you, he said abruptly. Officially, not as a blind date prospect, but as whatever this is. A woman foolish enough to fall for a crime lord before the first date even ended? Ayanna's tone was dry. What's the occasion? The girls have a dance recital next Saturday. She'll be there. It's a test. If Madame Kimura approves of you, it means something. In my world, in my family, her blessing carries weight. And if she doesn't approve, then nothing changes. Raiden kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, desperate little touches like a man memorizing scripture. I choose you anyway. I chose you the moment you crouched down to talk to my daughters like they mattered. But it will be easier if your scary grandmother likes me. Ayanna laughed despite everything. I've handled worse. What's one more judgmental matriarch? What she didn't see was the black sedan parked across the street from Raiden's building. Engine idling, camera lens catching the moment their silhouettes merged in the bathroom window. What she didn't hear was the phone call being made to Viktor Malenkov, confirming that Raiden Kimura had found a new weakness worth exploiting. What she didn't know was that her decision to stay had just painted a target on her back that no amount of courage could deflect. The week passed in a strange domestic rhythm that felt both foreign and natural. Ayanna worked her hospital shifts while Raiden conducted his business, but every evening found her back at the loft, teaching the girls to braid hair and telling them stories from her childhood that made their eyes grow wide. Madame Kimura attended the dance recital in a traditional hanbok that made every other parent look underdressed by comparison. She was 73, barely 5 feet tall, and radiated authority that made grown men step aside when she walked past. Ayanna met her outside the auditorium, deliberately choosing to face judgment head-on rather than hiding behind Raiden. Madame Kimura. Ayanna bowed. Not too deep, not too shallow. Thank you for the introduction to your grandson. The old woman's eyes were black and sharp as obsidian. You stayed after the shooting. Why? The girls needed someone. Ayanna met that piercing gaze without flinching. And your grandson needed someone to teach him that strength isn't the same as invincibility. He has weaknesses. It wasn't a question. He has humanity. Ayanna corrected gently. That's not the same thing. For exactly 3 seconds, Madame Kimura said nothing. Then, impossibly, her stern expression cracked into something that might have been approval. Sit with me, she commanded. moving toward the auditorium. We will watch my great-granddaughters dance, and you will tell me why a pediatric nurse from Harlem thinks she can survive in my grandson's world. The recital itself was chaos, tutus and missed cues, and Carrie stopping mid-routine to wave at Ayanna in the audience. But when Mika stumbled during her solo, it was Ayanna's encouraging smile that got her back on beat. When Suri froze with stage fright, it was Ayanna's subtle thumbs up that unlocked her paralysis. Raiden watched from the other side of his grandmother, seeing his daughters bloom under attention from someone who wasn't paid to care, wasn't obligated by blood, but chose them anyway. After the performance, outside the auditorium, while the girls changed, Madame Kimura delivered her verdict. "You are acceptable," she told Ayanna, with the gravity of a queen bestowing knighthood. "But my approval will make you a target. Viktor Malenkov has eyes everywhere. He will see you as leverage, as vulnerability." "With respect, Madame Kimura," Ayanna replied steadily. "I became a target the moment I walked into that restaurant. The question isn't whether I'm at risk. The question is whether I'm strong enough to handle it. Are you? Ask me again after we've survived whatever Victor's planning." The old woman's lips twitched in something that might have been a smile. Then she turned to Raiden, switching to rapid Korean that Ayanna couldn't follow, but understood from his expression meant something important. "She wants to host a family dinner," Raiden translated, "next month, to formally introduce you to the family. It's significant. Like announcing an engagement, significant. More like announcing you're under family protection, significant." Raiden's hand found hers. "It means Victor can't touch you without declaring war on the entire Kimura clan. And that would stop him." "No." Raiden's expression went dark, but it would make him think twice about doing it publicly. They collected the girls, excited, sugar high from post-recital snacks, talking over each other about their performances. Walking to the parking garage, Ayanna carried Carrie while Suri held her hand and Mika chattered to Raiden about every single detail of her routine. They looked for exactly 30 seconds, like a normal family leaving a normal recital. Then Ayanna felt it, that crawling sensation between her shoulder blades that every ER nurse learned to recognize. The feeling of being watched by someone with bad intentions. She glanced up, scanning the street, and caught the reflection of a camera lens in a parked car side mirror. "Raiden," she said quietly. He'd already seen it. His hand moved to his jacket, to the weapon she knew he carried everywhere, but then Suri tugged his sleeve and Mika asked if they could get ice cream, and the moment passed. "Not here," he murmured. "Not in front of them." They got in his armored SUV, because of course he drove an armored SUV, and Kaido materialized in the driver's seat like he'd been waiting there all along. "We have a tail," Kaido reported quietly. "Black sedan, 3 cars back. Want me to lose them?" "No." Raiden's voice was cold. "Let them follow. I want Victor to see exactly what he's up against." They stopped for ice cream anyway because Raiden refused to let his daughters sense fear. They sat in a brightly lit shop while Ayanna helped Mika clean chocolate from her face and Raiden pretended not to watch the black sedan idle outside. When Ayanna asked quietly while the girls argued over sprinkle colors. Soon, Raiden's jaw tightened. Victor's not patient. Now that he knows you matter, he'll move fast. Try to grab you, use you as leverage. Force me into a position where I have to choose between you and my territory. And what will you choose? I'll burn his entire organization to the ground. Raiden's voice held no doubt, no hesitation. And then I'll burn whatever's left. There's no choice, Ayanna. There's only different paths to the same destination. She believed him, and the certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like a promise. They took Ayanna home 3 days later. She just finished a double shift at the hospital, exhausted in that bone-deep way that made even standing feel like a monumental task. The staff parking lot was mostly empty at 2 a.m., security lights casting long shadows between the cars. She was reaching for her door handle when the cloth covered her mouth. Chemical sweet. Chloroform. Her nurse's brain identified even as her knees buckled. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but there were hands, too many hands, and a van door sliding open and darkness rushing in like a tide. Her last conscious thought was of 3 little girls who'd already lost one mother. She woke to concrete and cold. The warehouse was exactly what every crime movie had taught her to expect. Vast, empty, echoing. Metal rafters overhead. Broken windows letting in pale dawn light. And sitting in a chair directly in front of her, legs crossed like they were having tea, was a man who could only be Viktor Malenkov. He was younger than she expected. 40 maybe. Handsome in that brutal way of men who used violence like punctuation. His suit probably cost more than her car. Ayanna Brooks, he said pleasantly, his accent thick but his English perfect. Pediatric nurse. 29 years old. Student loans still being paid off. Mother recently diagnosed with early-stage diabetes. You volunteer at a children's literacy program on Sundays. Each detail felt like a knife. You've been busy. Ayanna managed, her throat raw. I'm thorough. Viktor stood, circling her chair slowly. I've been watching Raiden Kimura for 4 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Waiting for him to love something enough that taking it would break him. His daughters are untouchable. Viktor's smile was sharp. Killing children brings heat even I can't handle. Every organization in the city would unite against me. No, the girls are safe. But you? He stopped directly in front of her. You're perfect. New enough that losing you won't just hurt. It'll teach him that loving anyone is a fatal mistake. Ayanna's mind raced through scenarios, escape routes, survival strategies. But her hands were zip-tied to the chair, her ankles bound, and Viktor had at least 6 men visible in the warehouse's shadows. He'll come for me, she said because it was true. I'm counting on it. Viktor pulled out his phone, snapped a photo of her tied to the chair, and sent it. In fact, I've just told him exactly where to find you, along with the information that you have exactly 90 minutes before I get bored and start removing fingers to pass the time. Her stomach turned to ice. He'll bring his entire organization. He'll come alone. Viktor's confidence was absolute, because I made it clear that if I see anyone but him, you die immediately. So he'll walk in here, unarmed and unprotected, because that's what men like Raiden do when they love. They sacrifice themselves stupidly, predictably. And then I kill him in front of you. Slowly. So he understands what he took from me when my brother died. Viktor checked his watch. You have 88 minutes to consider whether this was worth a few weeks of playing house with a crime lord's children. He walked away, his footsteps echoing, and Ayanna was left alone with her racing heart and the approaching sound of her own doom. But she told Raiden the truth in his bathroom a week ago. She didn't run. She counted her breaths, tested her bonds, studied the warehouse's layout with a nurse's eye for detail, exits, weapons, advantages. And she waited for the man she'd somehow fallen in love with to walk into a trap that was designed to destroy them both. Somewhere across the city, Raiden Kimura was already moving. The clock was ticking, and Viktor Malenkov was about to learn that some men didn't break when you took what they loved. Some men just learned to burn hotter. Raiden arrived at minute 73. He walked through the warehouse's main entrance alone, hands visible, no weapons in sight. He moved like death incarnate, wearing an expensive suit, controlled, purposeful, absolutely lethal despite his apparent vulnerability. Ayanna's breath caught seeing him. Whole, alive, stupid enough to trade his life for hers. Let her go, Raiden said simply, his voice echoing through the vast space. Viktor laughed. You actually came alone. I almost can't believe it. The great Raiden Kimura, walking to his execution because of a woman he's known for 2 weeks. I've known her long enough. Raiden's eyes found Ayanna's, and the intensity there made her chest hurt. Let her go, Viktor. Your problem is with me. My problem was with you. Viktor moved behind Ayanna's chair, one hand on her shoulder. Now my solution involves making sure you die knowing you failed to protect another woman you loved. Just like you failed to protect your wife. The muscles in Raiden's jaw went rigid. You killed her, he said flatly. The accident was you. Finally figure that out? Viktor's laugh was sharp. Took you long enough. Yes, I killed your pregnant wife. Yes, I made you a widower raising triplets alone. And yes, now I'm going to kill this one too, except this time you get to watch. What happened next happened fast. The warehouse's roof exploded inward. Not literally, but the skylight shattered as bodies dropped through on rappelling lines. Kaido and Raiden's entire security detail, armed and armored, hitting the ground in a synchronized assault that spoke of military training and practice precision. Viktor's men scrambled for weapons, but they were already outmaneuvered, outgunned, and thoroughly outplayed. Because Raiden Kimura hadn't walked into a trap alone. He'd walked into a trap after spending 73 minutes surrounding it with his own people. In the chaos, Raiden moved. He crossed the distance to Ayanna in 3 strides, a knife appearing in his hand to cut her bonds even as gunfire erupted around them. He pulled her from the chair, his body shielding hers, and they ran. Not toward the entrance, toward a side door that Kaido had cleared seconds earlier, creating an escape route through what had been Viktor's kill box. Behind them, Viktor's scream of rage was cut short by the sound of a fist meeting flesh, Kaido's specialty. They burst into the gray morning light, into a waiting car, and Raiden was shouting orders into his phone even as they sped away from the warehouse. Safe house. Now, the girls. Already moved, Kaido confirmed from the driver's seat. Your grandmother has them at the compound. Full security. Only then did Raiden allow himself to look at Ayanna, really look at her. His hands shook as they traced her face, her arms, checking for damage. Did he hurt you? No. Ayanna caught his trembling hands. But you're an idiot for coming at all. I had to. You had 3 daughters who needed their father more than I needed a dramatic rescue. But her voice cracked on the words, and then they were kissing desperately, breathlessly, in the back seat of a speeding car, while Kaido diplomatically kept his eyes on the road. Viktor? Ayanna asked when they finally broke apart. Alive. Raiden's expression was grim. For now. But this ends today. No more threats. No more tests. No more waiting for him to make a move. What are you going to do? Raiden's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. I'm going to remind everyone in this city why you don't threaten a Kimura. The safe house was actually Madame Kimura's compound in Queens, a fortress disguised as an elegant estate. The girls threw themselves at Ayanna the moment she walked through the door, and she held them while they cried and asked questions and assured themselves she was really, truly okay. We thought the bad man took you forever. Mika sobbed into her shoulder. I'm right here, Ayanna promised, meeting Raiden's eyes over their heads. I'm not going anywhere. That night, after the girls finally fell asleep in Ayanna's arms, all 3 of them piled on top of her like she might disappear if they let go. Raiden found her on a garden balcony, staring at the city lights. It's done, he said quietly. Viktor's organization is dismantled, his assets frozen, his people scattered. He's alive, but powerless, which is a worse punishment than death for a man like him. And us. Raiden pulled her against his chest, his chin resting on her head. We built something new, something that doesn't involve looking over our shoulders waiting for the next attack. Is that possible? In your world? I don't know. His honesty was devastating. But I want to try. For them. For you. For whatever this is that we're building together. Ayanna turned in his arms, studying his face in the moonlight. I love you, she said simply. I know it's insane and too fast, and probably the worst decision I've ever made. But I love you anyway. It is insane, Raiden agreed. And too fast. And definitely dangerous. His smile was soft, real. And I love you too. So I guess we're both fools. They kissed on the balcony while the city sprawled beneath them. Beautiful and dangerous and full of possibility. Inside, 3 little girls slept peacefully, dreaming of a mother who'd chosen them and a father who'd burned the world to keep them safe. The next morning, Madame Kimura made tea and delivered her final verdict. You are family now, she told Ayanna with the formality of a coronation, which means you're under Kimura protection, which means anyone who touches you answers to all of us. Thank you, Ayanna said, understanding the weight of those words. Don't thank me yet. The old woman's smile was sharp. Being part of this family means Sunday dinners are mandatory, and I'm a harsh judge of cooking skills. Later, when they returned to the loft, secured now with even more elaborate security measures, Ayanna stood on the balcony with all 3 girls in her arms, watching the city wake up beneath them. Raiden stood behind her, his arms wrapping around all four of them, creating a circle of safety in a dangerous world. What happens now? Mika asked sleepily. Now, Ayanna said, kissing her forehead, we live. And far below, in the streets of Manhattan, where empires rose and fell and second chances were rarer than diamonds, 5 people who'd found each other against impossible odds began building something that looked dangerously close to happy. The days that followed felt like borrowed time, precious because they knew how close they'd come to losing everything. Ayanna moved more of her things into the loft, her nursing scrubs hanging beside Raiden's expensive suits in the closet. The girl started calling her Annie Aya at first, then just Aya, and finally, one morning over breakfast, Carrie said Mama so casually that everyone froze. Is that okay? Carrie asked, suddenly uncertain. Can we call you that? Ayanna's eyes filled with tears as she pulled all 3 girls into her arms. It's more than okay, baby. It's perfect. Raiden watched from across the kitchen, his coffee cup halfway to his lips, and the expression on his face was pure wonder mixed with relief. His daughters had a mother again, not a replacement. Nothing could replace what they'd lost, but someone who chose them, who stayed through danger and fear and chaos. Someone who loved them enough to risk everything. 3 weeks passed in this new normal. Ayanna continued her shifts at the hospital, but now Raiden's security detail shadowed her discreetly. The girls started preschool with a carefully vetted security team in place. Madame Kimura hosted Sunday dinners where she taught Ayanna traditional Korean recipes and told stories about Raiden's childhood that made him blush. They were building a life. A strange, complicated, dangerous life, but a life nonetheless. Then the package arrived. It came on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by a courier service to the front desk of Raiden's building. No return address. No identifying marks. Just a small box wrapped in brown paper. Raiden opened it in his office while Ayanna was at work and the girls were at school. Inside, a single photograph of his wife, taken 1 week before she died, smiling at the camera with her hand on her pregnant belly. And on the back, in handwriting that definitely wasn't Viktor's, a message was scrawled. Some debts take longer to collect. A friend. Raiden's hands trembled as he held the photograph. He destroyed this picture years ago, unable to bear looking at it. Someone had kept a copy. Someone who'd been watching even longer than Viktor. Someone patient enough to wait years for the perfect moment to strike. He called Kaido immediately. Run every analysis on this package. Fingerprints, handwriting, paper stock, everything. When Ayanna returned that evening, she found Raiden standing at the windows, the photograph clutched in his hand, staring out at the city like he was searching for enemies in every shadow. What happened? She asked, already knowing it was bad from the tension in his shoulders. He showed her the photograph and the message. Ayanna read it twice, her nurse's calm settling over her like armor. So Viktor wasn't working alone. No. Raiden's voice was hollow. Someone else orchestrated my wife's death. Viktor was just the weapon. And now that weapon is broken, whoever wielded it is making themselves known. What do they want? To make me watch while everyone I love slowly, systematically disappears. Raiden turned to face her, and his eyes held a darkness that made her breath catch. They're telling me the game isn't over. It's just beginning. Ayanna moved to his side, taking his hand firmly in hers. Then we play better, smarter. We protect the girls, we watch our backs, and we figure out who this is before they can make their next move. You should leave, Raiden said, but without conviction. Take the girls somewhere safe. Somewhere I can't put you in danger. We tried that conversation already. Ayanna's smile was fierce. I'm not leaving. None of us are. We're a family now, Raiden. And families stand together, especially when the wolves are circling. Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered in the fading light. Beautiful and merciless and full of hidden threats. Somewhere in those millions of lights, someone was watching. Someone patient. Someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't swift. It was slow, methodical, and absolutely devastating. The game had only just begun. And this time, the stakes were higher than territory or pride or power. This time it was about family. And Raiden Kimura was about to learn that protecting a family in his world meant becoming more dangerous than any enemy who dared threaten them. The city held its breath and waited. The end. Collision, did this story leave you breathless? If Raiden and Ayanna's dangerous love story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more heart-pounding romance and suspense. Fire.